God gave Israel exact blueprints for several sacred objects. Every measurement, every material, and every detail came straight from divine instruction. Then, one by one, almost every single one of these objects vanished from history or had to be destroyed by Israel's own leaders. No one today can point to where most of them ended up. Museums do not have them. Archaeologists have never dug them up. Entire objects that once sat at the center of Israel's worship simply stopped appearing in the historical record. This video will answer 3 questions that come up again and again. First, what was actually kept inside the Ark of the Covenant, and where did it really go? Second, what were the Urim and Thummim, and why did priests eventually lose the ability to use them? Third, why did Israel have to destroy a sacred object that Moses himself built, using God's own instructions? By the end, a strange pattern becomes obvious. These holy objects did not just disappear by accident. Some were lost, some were hidden, and at least one had to be smashed to pieces on purpose. Here is why this matters. These are not minor background details. Each of these objects played a direct role in major biblical events, and each one raises real historical questions that scholars still debate today. Start with the most famous object of all, the Ark of the Covenant. God gave Moses precise instructions for building it, down to the type of wood and the exact dimensions. Inside the Ark, according to the book of Hebrews, were 3 objects: the stone tablets of the 10 Commandments, a golden jar filled with manna from the wilderness, and Aaron's staff, which had miraculously sprouted almond blossoms. The Ark was not treated as a simple storage box. It was considered so powerful that a man named Uzzah was struck dead simply for touching it to steady it on a bumpy cart. The Ark supposedly caused the Jordan River to stop flowing so Israel could cross on dry ground. It reportedly caused the walls of Jericho to collapse when carried around the city. For centuries, it sat inside the holiest room of the temple in Jerusalem. Then, sometime before the Babylonian army destroyed that temple in 586 BC, the Ark simply disappears from the biblical record. The text never says it was captured. It never says it was destroyed. It just stops being mentioned. Later Jewish writings claim the prophet Jeremiah hid the Ark in a cave on Mount Nebo before the city fell. A very different tradition, held by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, claims the Ark has been kept safe for centuries in a guarded chapel in the city of Axum, watched over by a single monk for life, never allowed to be examined or photographed by outsiders. Neither claim has ever been independently confirmed. Over the past century, several explorers and researchers have publicly claimed to have located the Ark, sometimes pointing to caves in Israel, sometimes to sites in Ethiopia, and sometimes to other locations entirely. None of these claims has ever produced verifiable physical evidence that mainstream archaeologists accept. To this day, despite constant searching, no confirmed sighting of the Ark exists anywhere. The second mysterious object is much less famous but just as strange. The Urim and Thummim were small objects kept inside the high priest's breastplate. The Bible never actually describes what they looked like or exactly how they worked. What is clear is their purpose. Priests used them to receive a kind of divine yes or no answer on important national decisions, especially before Israel had kings. King Saul used them. Early Israelite leaders relied on them during military crises. Then, by the time Israel returned from exile in Babylon, something had changed. The book of Ezra describes priests whose family records could not be verified, and it says they were told to wait until a priest could consult the Urim and Thummim to settle the matter. That phrasing strongly suggests the Urim and Thummim were no longer functioning or were no longer available by that point in history. Jewish tradition later confirmed this directly, teaching that this method of divine guidance ended along with the First Temple. A tool that once helped settle Israel's biggest decisions simply stopped working, and the text never explains exactly why. The third object connects directly back to the Ark itself. Aaron's rod, the staff kept inside the Ark alongside the tablets and the manna, has its own strange backstory. After a serious rebellion against Aaron's authority as high priest, God settled the dispute in a dramatic way. 12 wooden staffs, one from each tribe's leader, were placed overnight in the sacred tent. By morning, only Aaron's staff had sprouted buds, blossoms, and ripe almonds, all in a single night. It was kept from that point on as permanent proof of God's chosen priesthood. Once it was placed inside the ark, its fate became tied to the ark's own mysterious disappearance. Whatever happened to the ark also happened to Aaron's rod and the golden jar of manna. All three vanished from history together as one single lost set. The fourth object is the strangest story of all, because this one was not lost. It was deliberately destroyed by Israel's own government. During the wilderness years, poisonous snakes attacked the Israelite camp as punishment for the people's complaining. God instructed Moses to make a bronze snake and mount it on a pole. Anyone who looked at it after being bitten would survive. This object, called Nehushtan, was built at God's own direct command, and it worked exactly as promised. But centuries later, something went wrong. The Israelites started treating the bronze snake itself as a god. They burned incense to it as if it had power on its own, completely missing the point of the original miracle. When King Hezekiah took the throne, one of his first religious reforms was ordering Nehushtan smashed to pieces. A sacred object, built under direct divine instruction and used in a genuine miracle, had become an idol serious enough that Israel's own reforming king had to destroy it. There is a fifth sacred object worth knowing, and this one has a much later ending, backed by actual physical evidence. The temple menorah was a golden, seven-branched lampstand that stood inside the Jerusalem temple for centuries. Like the ark, it was built according to extremely precise divine instructions given to Moses. In the year 70 AD, Roman forces under the future Emperor Titus destroyed the Second Temple and took its treasures back to Rome as war spoils. This event was not left to legend or later tradition. It was carved in stone. A monument called the Arch of Titus still stands in Rome today, showing Roman soldiers carrying the menorah through the streets in a victory parade. That much is historically certain. What happened after that parade is where the trail goes cold again. Some later writers claimed the menorah was melted down or thrown into the Tiber River. Others claimed it was carried off centuries later when the Vandals sacked Rome and then eventually taken to North Africa. A few traditions even claim it was quietly moved into the Vatican's own storerooms and remains hidden there today. No version of this story has ever been confirmed with physical proof. The menorah is the one object on this list that was documented all the way up until the moment it left Jewish hands, and it still managed to disappear completely afterward. Here is something that rarely gets mentioned alongside these stories. All four of these objects share the exact same starting point. Every one of them was built or given under extremely specific, detailed divine instructions. None of them were invented by ordinary people trying to create religious symbols on their own. And yet every single one ended the same way: lost, disappeared, no longer functional, or destroyed outright. Even objects made under perfect divine instruction were not treated as permanent magical items. Their power was never in the material itself. Once their purpose was served, or once people started worshiping the object instead of what it represented, each one reached the same ending. So here is the full picture. The Ark of the Covenant vanished from the historical record without any confirmed explanation, leaving behind only competing traditions and unverified claims. The Urim and Thummim quietly stopped working sometime after the Babylonian exile, and no priest after that point could explain exactly why. Aaron's rod disappeared along with the ark, sharing its unknown fate, and the bronze serpent, the one object whose ending is actually confirmed in detail, was smashed to pieces by Israel's own king because people had turned a miracle into an idol. 5 sacred objects, 5 different endings, and only 2 of them, the bronze serpent and the menorah, end with any solid historical explanation at all. The rest simply fade out of the record, leaving centuries of searching, competing traditions, and unanswered questions in their place. Whatever happened to the rest, the Bible never says.